Hello everybody, and welcome back to lesson 12 out of 15 of our digital SAT reading and writing course. Today's lesson is going to be the hardest one of the series on punctuation. So this one is very meticulous, so let's be careful here, okay? First of all, we're going to need to know what our clauses are. So we have three main types. We have our independent clauses, which represent their own ideas, and they can exist completely on their own. So underlined here, I have what an independent clause is. The computer was pricey, but a worthy investment. This is a complete idea and can exist on its own and will be grammatically correct. A dependent clause is one which cannot exist on its own. It's kind of an ending of a sentence or a piece, right? A lot of times these come after commas, okay? So look out for that too. Right here, the dependent clause would be, but a worthy investment. This needs something to have meaning, right? So it would need this part. By its own, it's just a dependent clause. And a non-essential clause can be removed and the meaning of the sentence will remain the same. Most of the time, the vast majority of the time, non-essential clauses exist only to add information, but the information is still not completely necessary, okay? So right here, if we were to add in way out of his price range to change this statement into the computer was pricey, way out of his price range, but a worthy investment. You could remove this completely and it would be the same. The meaning would be the same. Okay, so now that we hopefully have this down, let's go on to our punctuation. We have apostrophes first. Apostrophes are used to create contractions. So that's, for example, taking two words, merging them into one. So it's is the same as saying it is. Possessives, which is showing possession, kind of, like if you were to say, this is my fan, right? This is Joseph's fan. That's possessive, okay? The Joseph apostrophe S, that would make it possessive, okay? A contraction is not possessive, okay? And of course, to properly create a possessive out of a noun, add an apostrophe S, and if it ends in an S, only add the apostrophe, and that will make it possessive, okay? Now remember this. This is very important. It's, or any type of contraction like that, will never be possessive. So you can't say it's, or the fan is its, right? You can't use it to replace a noun and it be possessive on the SAT. On the SAT, it will always mean it is, okay? So never make that mistake thinking that it's possessive. Dashes. Dashes must be preceded by an independent clause. And in the case of non-essential clauses, they must surround it completely. Single dashes can also set off a declaration or definition. We'll go into this when we get to our examples, okay? But single dashes, to be grammatically correct, there has to be an independent clause before them, and they must surround non-essential clauses. So we can actually see right here, it surrounds non-essential clause. The non-essential clause being way out of its price range, there's a dash that comes before it and a dash that comes right after it. And that actually nicely tells us what exactly the non-essential clause there would be. But remember, if you ever have a question where it begins in a dash and you have an obvious non-essential clause, and it's asking you what should go after it, it'll always be the same type of punctuation, whether that be a dash in this case, or it could also be a comma. Colons must also be preceded by an independent clause, and they can also set off a declaration, definition, or list. But these two still have their own differences, okay? But you'll probably get better at recognizing those once you practice a little bit more, okay? But with a little bit of practice, you'll be able to recognize that a little bit easier, which we'll have coming up. And this one's also very important. On the SAT, semicolons and periods are equivalent. They both separate independent clauses and are interchangeable. Okay, so now let me tell you a little bit of maybe the way I think on the test, right? These separate their own ideas. So you can have a complete idea, a period or a semicolon, and another idea, okay? These kind of are additive. They kind of add to an idea, okay, but these separate complete ideas, okay? So just try to remember that. And now, of course, we have the hardest part, commas. Commas are incredibly versatile, and there are so many rules you have to remember, but here I'll list off some. Commas can be used to separate dependent and independent clauses. This was actually seen right here, where it separates the independent and the dependent clause. They can also be used to surround non-essential clauses, just like the dashes. And they can also surround transition words, like however. If you were to make a statement, comma, however, comma, and then your next statement that comes after that, okay? That is grammatically correct. However, commas cannot separate two independent clauses. That is the job of periods and semicolons. Remember, all of these punctuations have their own meanings, okay? And they don't really overlap that much, okay? Commas exist because they're their own thing, and periods and semicolons also have their own job. 2. Commas can be used to change the subject of a verb. Here we have the very famous example, let's eat grandpa, and let's eat, comma, grandpa. Here, you're actually eating him, and here you're inviting him to eat. So the action that you're doing here is a little bit different, depending on where the comma is. So the commas would obviously change the meaning of the sentence sometimes, so that you have to pay attention to. 3. Be aware of not overusing commas, such as around the words and but. Those ones you can't surround with commas like you could surround a transition word. They should also not be used for prepositional phrases. So prepositional phrases are your ones where they're kind of describing a position, like here which is in the valley. That's a prepositional phrase, okay? And this is our example of actually when you should not use a comma in a prepositional phrase like this. I enjoyed riding the horse in the valley is the correct one, okay? But I enjoyed riding the horse, comma, in the valley, it's not the same. It changes the meaning, just like this, but it's just a little bit more subtle, okay? But you enjoyed riding the horse, which was in the valley. Here, you enjoyed riding the horse, comma, because it's a comma, that means you separated a dependent clause. These are not independent clauses because commas don't follow that. They don't separate independent clauses, only dependent clauses. So what you have here is you enjoyed riding the horse, and then a dependent clause which doesn't really have a meaning, okay? If you're a native English speaker, you definitely still know what this means, but grammatically, this actually doesn't really have a meaning because you enjoyed riding the horse, comma, idea finishes in the valley. It doesn't really have a meaning to it, okay? So this one could really easily get you, but let's just have a little bit of practice. When external forces are applied to common glass made up from silicates, energy builds up around minuscule defects in the material, resulting in fractures. Recently, engineer Erkka Framberg of Tampere University in Finland used the chemical blank to make a glassy solid that can withstand higher strain than silicate glass can before fracturing. So which one here would be the correct option? We just went over commas actually, so this one hopefully wouldn't be too bad. But the answer here is D, okay? Because it's a single idea, okay? This lady used the chemical compound aluminum oxide to make a glassy solid that can withstand higher strain. Let's say we put a comma here, okay? And it would apply for pretty much all of these. This one is just way more wrong than the other two. So we'll just look at, let's just say B, okay? Because B might trick you, okay? For the same reason why using the comma in the prepositional phrase is wrong here, it would be wrong here as well. Because she used the chemical compound aluminum oxide. Pause. To make a glassy solid that can withstand higher strain than silicate glass before manufacturing. Think of this as a dependent clause here, okay? So it's separate from this. This is a dependent clause, this is a dependent clause. When you use a comma, that's what this turns into. But this is its own idea. So that's why D would be correct here, okay? Let's look at the next one. Stomata. Tiny pore structures in a leaf that absorb gases needed for plant growth open when guard cells surrounding each pore swell with water. In a pivotal 2007 article, Plant Cell blank showed that lipid molecules called phosphates are responsible for signaling guard cells to open stomata. So which one of these would be correct? Well, actually we had a similar one right before this. It would be C, okay, because once again a comma would separate the ideas and this would not turn into its own idea anymore, okay? Plant cell biologist Yuri Lee was the one who did this, okay? She was the one who showed that lipid molecules are responsible for signaling guard cells to open. We didn't have plant cell biologist, comma, Yuri Lee, comma, showed that lipid molecules called whatever, right? So we need C here to keep the flow going and keep the idea its own idea. Researchers studying magnetosensation have determined why some soil-dwelling roundworms in the southern hemisphere move in the opposite direction of Earth's magnetic field when searching for blank. In the northern hemisphere, the magnetic field points down into the ground, but in the southern hemisphere, it points up toward the surface and away from worms' food sources. Which one is correct? So we have B, which is obviously another comma. We can have Earth's magnetic field when searching for food, comma. In the northern hemisphere, this is kind of just a declaration, right? So if you were to comma here, you would have the worms moving in the opposite direction of Earth's magnetic field, comma, separate the idea, and then you have this declaration here, which doesn't really have a meaning when you don't know what you're talking about. Because when you separated the worms from what you've said here, the food sources, you have no idea, grammatically, they're not really related too much. Okay, so B is wrong. And it might seem a little bit confusing, but don't worry, I'll tell you what clears this up. C is wrong because, well, why exactly is C wrong? That would mean when searching for food while in the northern hemisphere, the magnetic field points down into the ground, but in the southern hemisphere it points up. So this would create a separation between this idea and the rest, which would also create a separation, which is wrong. And D would do the same thing. Why is A correct then? Because A is a colon. And I stated earlier that this is a declaration. It is telling you that in the northern hemisphere the magnetic field points down, but in the southern hemisphere it points up. That is a declaration. And colons precede declarations. So that would mean A is the correct option here. And the comma is simply used to separate the items in the declaration. Okay, so commas, it is legal to use commas to separate items in a list, and this is also a declaration in that list. Okay, now colons can also set off declarations and lists, so in both scenarios, the colon would be the correct one to go with here. Okay, let's move on. In 1943, in the midst of World War II, mathematics professor Grace Hopper was recruited by the U.S. military to help the war effort by solving complex equations. Hopper's subsequent career would involve more than just blank. As a pioneering computer programmer, Hopper would help usher in the digital age. Which one is right here? Well, I'll help you out a little bit. As a pioneering computer programmer, Hopper would help usher in the digital age. What is this? This is a declaration, once again. So what could that leave us with the only correct answer? A. That's your colon. Okay, so let's move on. During the English neoclassical period, 1660 to 1789, many writers imitated the epic poetry and satires of ancient Greece and Rome. They were not the first in England to adopt the literary modes of classical blank. Some of the most prominent figures of the earlier Renaissance period were also influenced by ancient Greek and Roman literature. So which one is right here? I'll give you some more help, okay? This is an idea, right? They were not the first in England to adopt the literary modes of classical something, right? We can see it probably be classical antiquity. And then we have either ending in a comma or a semicolon, okay? This one is just wrong because you're separating two ideas, but you're starting with a however. It's not going to be correct, okay? But we're either going to end with a semicolon or a comma. Now, this right here could exist on its own. Some of the most prominent figures of the early Renaissance period were also influenced by ancient Greek and Roman literature. That is a clause that can exist on its own, meaning it's an independent clause. If we have an independent clause here, and another independent clause here, what does that make the correct choice? C. Because it's a semicolon. Semicolons and periods are the only ones that can separate independent clauses, not commas. In crafting her fantasy fiction, Nigerian-born British author Helen Oyeyemi has drawn inspiration from the classic 19th century fairy tales of the Brothers Grimm. Her 2014 novel Boy Snow Bird, for instance, is a complex retelling of the story of Snow White, while her 2019 novel, Blank, offers a delicious twist on the classic tale of Hansel and Gretel. Okay, so let's look at this. Her 2019 novel, Gingerbread, with a dash, comma, nothing, or colon. This is incomplete if you say, offers a delicious twist on the classic tale of Hansel and Gretel. So, it's not a colon, and it could be a dash or comma, or nothing, okay? In the case of a dash and a comma, though, we would be separating this from the rest of what we have up here. So, what we would have is an incomplete idea once again, so that would make C the correct answer here, because her 2019 novel, Gingerbread, offers a delicious twist, okay? It's gingerbread that offers a delicious twist. We can't separate this with a comma and then make a statement after that. Okay? That leaves something incomplete. In 1966, Emmett Ashford became the first African American to umpire a Major League Baseball game. His energetic gestures announcing when a player had struck out and his habit of barreling after a hit ball to see if it would land out of blank helped transform the traditionally solemn umpire role into a dynamic one. So let's look at this one. First of all, something I should probably note is that when we're looking at a question and we have a few that might look like they might be right, most of the time it's going to be the shorter one and the one that's less repetitive. Okay, so just keep that in mind, because shorter ones they generally help keep the tone better, and that helps the flow of ideas go more smoothly. Okay, so we know that B is going to be wrong, as I've stated earlier, because it's separating the idea here and it leaves the second part of it completely just unfinished, okay, or incomplete. So we're between A, C, and D, and we would be choosing A here, knowing that it's the shortest one. And also the fact that adding a that and a to actually kind of changes it a little bit, makes it a little bit longer, it might change the tone a little bit, okay? So we know that A would be the correct choice here. Okay, last one for today. American writer Edwidge Danticat, who emigrated from Haiti in 1981, has won acclaim for her powerful short stories, novels, and blank. Her lyrical yet unflinching depictions of her native country's turbulent history, writer Robert Antoni has compared Danticat to a Nobel Prize-winning novelist Toni Morrison. Which one of these would be correct? Let's look at these. This woman emigrated from Haiti, won acclaim for her powerful novels. That's an idea. Okay, she won acclaim for powerful novels. That is its own idea. Her lyrical yet unflinching depictions of her native country's turbulent history has won her a comparison to a Nobel Prize-winning novelist. That is also its own idea. So what would be the correct option here? It would be T, because we have the period separating the two independent ideas. Okay. Final tips. Understand the question. What punctuation is necessary? Follow the rules. Okay, all punctuation is still bound by the rules of grammar. Okay, they all do their different things, so pick the correct one and make sure you know why your choice is correct. Okay, so if you're going to pick a period, are there two independent ideas between them? If you're going to pick a comma, is it because there's a dependent clause coming after? Okay, so thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you learned a lot from it. Please subscribe, it helps me make more free videos for you all, and good luck on any SATs you're taking in the future.